November 14, 1961, 9:42 p.m. The receipt lay half-folded on the counter, ink still wet, when Bumpy Johnson paused, read one wrong word, and let the room go quiet. The bell over the door made a sound that didn't belong to the hour. It rang once, thin and tired, then stopped. Bumpy Johnson stepped inside and let the door close behind him. He did not look around right away. He let the room settle first. The place was small, too clean for how late it was. The counter held a cash drawer, a pen on a chain, and a receipt folded once down the middle. The paper was still warm from the machine. The ink had not finished drying. Bumpy moved closer. He did not touch it yet. The clerk stood on the other side, shoulders forward, eyes alert in the wrong way. He smiled too quickly. His hands hovered near the register, then pulled back. He waited. Outside, a patrol car rolled past the window. The headlights slid across the glass and briefly filled the room with white. No siren, no stop, just the reminder that being noticed was never free. The clerk followed the light with his eyes. Bumpy did not. The receipt sat between them like a third presence. The number was clear, $6,200. The label beneath it was not. Bumpy unfolded the paper with 2 fingers, slow, careful. The chain on the pen rattled softly as his knuckle brushed it. He read the line once, then again. His face did not change. He looked up. "Who trained you to write that word?" he said. The clerk opened his mouth, then closed it. He swallowed. "It's just how the machine prints it." Bumpy nodded, as if that settled nothing at all. He placed the receipt flat on the counter, smoothing the crease. He lined it with the edge, making it exact. "The machine prints what it's told," he said. His voice was low, even. "People decide what it means." The clerk laughed once, short and nervous. He stopped himself. "It's not a big thing," he said. "It's just paperwork." Bumpy looked at him for a moment longer than comfort allows. He took in the man's face, the way his eyes avoided the paper now, the way his jaw tightened as if holding something back. Outside, the street went quiet again. Bumpy tapped the receipt once, not hard, just enough to draw attention. "Ink doesn't forget," he said. The clerk leaned forward, then caught himself. "I can fix it later," he said. "Tomorrow." Bumpy shook his head once, almost gently. "By morning," he said, "it won't be yours to fix." The words landed without force. They did not need it. The clerk understood the shape of them even if he did not yet accept the weight. Bumpy folded the receipt again, exactly along its old line, and slid it back across the counter. He did not take it with him. He left it where it was. He turned slightly, enough that the clerk could see he was about to leave. The space felt smaller for it. One last look, calm, measuring. "If it stays wrong," Bumpy said, "it stays true somewhere else." He stepped back toward the door. The bell rang again, thin and tired just as before. The clerk stood alone with the paper, the quiet, and the understanding that something had already been set in motion. If a mistake is written down and allowed to travel, who decides when it stops being a mistake? The clerk did not move right away. He watched the door as if it might open again on its own. When it didn't, he looked back down at the receipt. $6,200. The number sat clean and confident. The word beneath it looked smaller now, wrong in a way that felt louder the longer he stared. He reached for the pen on the chain. His hand stopped halfway. He let it fall back to the counter. The register hummed softly. The sound had always been comforting before. Tonight it felt like breathing from a machine that never slept. He folded the receipt again, then unfolded it, hoping the word might change when he wasn't looking. It didn't. He thought about tearing it. The idea came fast, then faded. Paper could be destroyed, records could not. The clerk leaned back and glanced toward the window. The street outside looked ordinary. A couple passed without slowing. A bus sighed at the corner and moved on. Harlem did not pause for small mistakes. It absorbed them. He picked up the receipt again, this time holding it by the edge. The ink had dried. It had chosen its place. Bumpy Johnson had not threatened him. That was what made it worse. There had been no raised voice, no demand, no instruction beyond the quiet certainty that morning would arrive whether the clerk was ready or not. The clerk tried to tell himself it was nothing, a mislabeled line, a technical error. He had done it before. Everyone did. Shortcuts kept the night moving. Shortcuts kept the line short and the drawer balanced. But this one felt different, not because of the amount, because someone had seen it. He imagined the receipt leaving the shop, passing through hands that did not know him and did not care, being read without context, being accepted as fact. He imagined explaining it later. The words felt weak even in his head. The door opened again. A customer stepped in, nodded once, and moved toward the counter. The clerk straightened. Habit took over. He rang the sale, made change, slid a fresh receipt across. The machine printed clean, obedient lines. When the customer left, the clerk stood still. The contrast was sharp. One slip of paper meant nothing. The other meant everything. He checked the clock above the shelf. Not late yet. Plenty of time, he told himself, but the phrase sounded false as soon as it formed. Time was not the issue. Ownership was. The clerk opened the drawer beneath the counter and took out the ledger. It was heavy, bound tight, pages worn smooth by years of use. He flipped to the current date. The lines were already filling. Names, numbers, notes written by different hands, all of them permanent in their own way. He placed the receipt beside it. The two did not agree. The ledger told one story, the paper told another. He sat there, weighing which version of himself he wanted to leave behind. The one who fixed things quietly, or the one who let them stand because they were easier. Bumpy's voice returned to him, steady and low. People decide what it means. The clerk reached for the pen again. This time he picked it up. He did not write yet. He held it, feeling the weight, the thinness of the metal. He imagined the line he would draw, how small it would look, how final. Outside, the night deepened. Somewhere a radio played softly. Somewhere else a door slammed and stayed shut. The clerk leaned forward and rested his forearms on the counter. The receipt lay between him and the ledger, patient. If he changed it now, the mistake would die here. If he didn't, it would live longer than his shift, longer than his explanation. He exhaled slowly and looked down at the page. By morning, one version of the truth would be fixed in ink. Bumpy Johnson came back the same way he had left. No hurry, no signal. The bell gave its tired sound and fell silent again. The clerk felt it before he saw him. The air changed. The room tightened without anyone touching a thing. Bumpy did not go straight to the counter this time. He stood near the door, letting his coat settle, letting the clerk notice that nothing else in the room mattered while he was there. Then he walked forward and stopped where the receipt had been earlier. It was gone. Bumpy looked at the empty space. Not long, just long enough. "Good," he said. The word landed soft and final. The clerk did not answer. He waited. Bumpy turned his eyes to the ledger now sitting half open beneath the counter. He did not ask to see it. He did not point. He simply acknowledged it by standing still. "May I?" Bumpy said, and held out his hand. The clerk hesitated, only a second. He slid the book forward. Bumpy opened it carefully as if the pages might bruise. He found the date without help. His finger followed the line until it reached the number. 6,200. The word beside it was clean, correct, small but deliberate. Bumpy nodded once. "That took courage," he said. The clerk swallowed. It took a pen. Bumpy allowed the faintest hint of a smile. It did not soften his face. "Pens don't choose," he said. "Men do." The clerk leaned forward, unable to stop himself. "I didn't mean anything by it before," he said. The words came faster now. It was routine. No one ever checks. It wasn't personal. Bumpy closed the ledger and slid it back across the counter. He did not argue. He did not correct him. "That's usually when it matters most," he said. Silence returned, it stayed. Outside, a truck rolled past, rattling the glass. Somewhere down the block, a voice laughed and cut off short. Life continued at a distance, unconcerned with this small room and its quiet reckoning. Bumpy rested his hand on the counter, flat, still. The wood creaked faintly under the pressure, not force, presence. "You understand why I came back," he said. The clerk nodded. He did not trust his voice. "I came to see if the record could be trusted," Bumpy continued. "Not tonight, tomorrow, next week, when no one remembers the face behind the ink." He lifted his hand and adjusted the ledger's position, squaring it with the edge of the counter. Order restored, whether anyone noticed or not. The clerk spoke before fear could stop him. "What if I hadn't fixed it?" Bumpy looked at him then, really looked. His eyes were calm, almost kind, but they did not look away. "Then it would have followed you," he said, quietly. The clerk felt the truth of it settle into him, not as threat, as fact. Bumpy turned toward the door again. He paused there, not opening it yet. "You did the right thing," he said. "Don't confuse that with being finished." The bell rang as he left, same thin sound, same ending. The clerk stood alone again, ledger closed, counter cleared. The danger had passed, but its shape remained, etched into habit and memory. If a mistake can be corrected once, what does that make the man who almost let it stand? The clerk did not move after Bumpy left. He stood where he was, hands resting on the counter, eyes fixed on the ledger as if it might open itself again. The room felt larger now, emptier, the kind of space that made small sounds noticeable, the hum of the lights, the distant rhythm of traffic, his own breathing slow and careful. He reached for the ledger and pulled it toward him. He opened it again, not to check the number, but to remind himself it was real. The corrected word sat there without apology. It did not glow. It did not announce itself. It simply existed. He thought about how close he had come to leaving it wrong. That thought stayed with him longer than comfort allowed. He closed the book and slid it back into the drawer beneath the counter. The wood scraped softly. He left the drawer open for a moment, then pushed it shut with his knee. The sound felt final. A customer entered, then another. The clerk worked without error. His hands were steady now, not quick. Each number entered with care, each receipt torn cleanly along the edge. No shortcuts. Near midnight, the store emptied again. The clerk wiped the counter once, then again, as if something invisible might still be there. The space where the receipt had once rested looked ordinary now, too ordinary. He did not like that. He checked the clock. Not much time left in the shift. The deadline Bumpy had never named was approaching all the same. The clerk filled out the closing paperwork slowly. Each line took longer than it should have. He read every word before moving on. When he finished, he sat back and looked at the stack of forms. They told one story now. There would be no confusion in the morning, no quiet error traveling where it didn't belong. He stood and pulled on his coat. As he reached for the light switch, he paused. The store behind him looked the same as it always had, but he did not feel the same leaving it. Outside, the night air was cold. He locked the door and tested it once, then twice. He did not know why he did that, he just did. He walked a block before he realized his hands were shaking, not from fear, from release. Bumpy Johnson had not taken anything from him. That was the part that stayed. He had left something instead, a standard, a line that could not be crossed again without being seen, even if no one else was there to witness it. The clerk stopped under a streetlight and looked down at his hands. Ink stains marked one finger. He rubbed at them, but they did not come off. He smiled once, brief, uncertain. Tomorrow the store would open. Someone else would stand behind the counter. The ledger would be checked and accepted. The mistake would never be mentioned. But the knowledge would stay with him, quiet, permanent. When truth surfaces without force, Does that make the silence harder to escape? Morning did not arrive all at once. It crept in through habit. The clerk woke before his alarm. He lay still, listening to the quiet of his room, waiting for the sense of urgency that usually followed a long shift. It didn't come. What came instead was a calm wait, settled and exact. At the shop, the door opened on time. The lights came on. The register hummed the same way it always had. Nothing announced that anything had changed. The ledger was already on the counter when he arrived, open to the right date. A supervisor stood nearby, flipping pages without interest. This was routine. This was how things were checked and forgotten. The clerk waited. A finger traced the line. 6,200. The word beside it read clean and correct. The supervisor nodded once and turned the page. "Looks fine," he said, already moving on. That was it. No pause, no question, no suspicion. The corrected truth passed through inspection without resistance, accepted because it belonged. The clerk felt something loosen in his chest, not relief, alignment. The rest of the morning passed smoothly. Customers came and went. Money changed hands. Receipts printed and tore away clean. Each one felt heavier than before, not in burden but in meaning. Precision had a cost. It slowed him down. He double-checked numbers. He read labels twice. The line grew longer at times. A few customers sighed. One complained softly. The clerk did not rush. During a quiet stretch, he thought about Bumpy Johnson again. Not the man himself, but the way he had stood. Still, certain, as if the world would bend back into place if left alone long enough. Bumpy had not needed to explain why accuracy mattered. He had assumed it did. That assumption had carried more force than any warning. Near noon, a coworker leaned in. "You're being careful today," he said, half smiling, "trying to impress someone." The clerk shook his head, "Just trying to sleep later." The coworker laughed and moved on. Sleep, that was the thing no one else could see. The clerk knew that if he had left the receipt wrong, rest would have been shallow, interrupted, the kind that ends before it restores anything. He understood now that some errors cost more after they are ignored. During his break, he sat alone at the back table and watched dust drift in the light. He thought about habits, how easily they formed, how quietly they hardened into character. He thought about how close he had come to becoming someone else without noticing. When his shift ended, he cleaned his station with care. He aligned the ledger. He checked the drawer twice. He did not linger. Outside, the day was bright and ordinary. Harlem moved around him without recognition. He blended back into it easily. That, too, felt earned. As he walked home, he realized something had changed. Not around him, in him. He would never again believe that a small lie stayed small. The thought did not scare him, it steadied him. If precision costs time and comfort, what does carelessness end up charging instead? The clerk noticed the difference at the end of the week. It showed up in small ways, in how his hands moved without rushing, in how his eyes lingered on a line before he accepted it, in how silence no longer made him uneasy. He stood behind the counter one afternoon while another clerk worked the register beside him. The younger man moved fast, fingers flying, receipts stacking up. He mislabeled something small, not money, just a category, easy to miss, easier to ignore. The clerk watched. He did not correct him right away. He waited until the customer left, until the noise thinned. Then he leaned over and pointed at the line. "That one's wrong," he said. The younger clerk frowned. "It's fine," he said. "Nobody checks those." The clerk didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He tapped the paper once and slid it back. "They will," he said, "just not today." The younger clerk rolled his eyes, then hesitated. He reread the line. His pen hovered. He sighed and fixed it. "There," he said, "happy." The clerk nodded once. "You will be." He stepped back and returned to his station. That was when he understood what Bumpy Johnson had given him. Not fear, not favor, permission to be exact in a world that preferred speed. Later that evening, the supervisor called him into the office. No tone, no warning, just routine. "You're slower lately," the man said, not unkindly, "but cleaner, fewer corrections down the line." The clerk waited. The supervisor closed the folder. "Keep it that way." That was the whole conversation. Walking home, the clerk passed the same storefront where the patrol car had rolled by nights earlier. The glass reflected him faintly. He paused and looked at his own face. He looked the same. That was the strange part. No mark, no sign, just a man heading home. But he knew better now. Precision had rearranged him quietly. It had taken root in how he spoke, how he chose words, how he decided when silence was enough. At home, he washed his hands. The faint ink stain was gone at last. The skin beneath looked ordinary again. He sat at the table and ate without distraction. He slept without waking. In the days that followed, the ledger continued to accept his handwriting. The register continued to hum. The city continued to move on. No one ever mentioned the receipt again. But the clerk did not forget it. He didn't need to. Its lesson had moved from paper into habit. Somewhere Bumpy Johnson went on with his life. Their paths never crossed again. That felt right. Precision had done its work without witnesses. If being careful becomes who you are, does anyone ever need to know what taught you? The clerk did not notice the end coming. That was the point of it. The schedule changed without comment. His name moved lower on the board, then disappeared for a day, then came back with fewer hours. No explanation followed. None was needed. Shifts end the same way mistakes do, quietly, once they are no longer useful. He worked his last evening without ceremony. The store looked unchanged. Same counter, same register, same pen on its thin chain, but the receipt was gone, not just from the drawer, from the rhythm of the place. That absence carried more weight than the paper ever had. He worked carefully until the end, slower than most, cleaner than all. When the final customer left, he closed the register and counted the drawer twice. The numbers agreed. They always did now. He wrote the totals by hand, steady, exact, then closed the ledger. He didn't linger. At the door, he paused once and looked back. The counter reflected the light, smooth, empty, nothing accusing, nothing forgiving. Outside, the street had already moved on. New faces, new conversations. The city had no interest in who had stood where the night before. He walked 2 blocks before he felt it, the quiet consequence settling in. No receipt to prove anything had happened. No witness to confirm the choice he had made. Just the habit that remained. He would carry that. At home, he placed his coat on the chair instead of the floor. He lined his shoes neatly against the wall. Small order, private order. In the morning, he would look for other work, somewhere else, somewhere the ledger didn't know his name. The receipt had done what it came to do. It had marked a moment, then it had vanished. If an object disappears but the standard stays, which one was ever really powerful?